This is the depiction of King of Israel, Yehu, son of Yimshi. He is depicted in an Assyrian chronicle from the 9th century BC. This is a mosaic of King David found in the synagogue in the city of Gaza. This is another mosaic of a Jewish woman. This is in the city of Siporis. As you can see, this is a Jewish woman. This is a depiction of Philo of Alexandria, a Jew who lived in the 1st century CE, the time of Jesus. This is a depiction of Yehuda Nasi, who lived in about the year 200. He is the compiler of the Mishnah. This is a depiction of the Rambam, who lived in the 12th century. He's a very famous rabbi. This is Rashi, a very famous commentator of the Bible, who lived also in the 12th century, lived in Germany. This is another depiction of him, also a very famous rabbi. The commentary of the Bible by him is the most common one. This is Yosef Karo. He is the writer of Shulchan Aruch, which is the final, most important book about Jewish law, written in the 16th century in Israel, in Safed. This is Rabbi Yosef Karo, is a Sephardi rabbi. This is Rabbi Chaim Karigal. He was the messenger of the city Hebron in Israel in the 18th century. This is a depiction of him. This is a depiction of Theodor Herzl, lived in the end of the 19th century. He was the father of modern Zionism. This is famous Israeli actor Zohar Strauss, famous mainly for the show Shtisel, also from the movie Lebanon, and other stuff. In the beginning of the 11th century BC, a new kingdom developed in the Middle East, the Kingdom of Israel. Afterwards, it was separated, the Kingdom of Judea and Israel, and one of its king, King Yehu, is depicted in this Assyrian obelisk, the Black Obelisk. Both the Kingdom of Judea and Israel are well depicted in the Hebrew Bible, and also in the Old Testament, and also in Antiquities of the Jews by Josephus Flavius, which was written by the 1st century CE, and also by thousands of archaeological sites and monuments found in the land of Israel. While the kingdom of Israel was destroyed by the Assyrians in the year 722 BC, the kingdom of Judea was destroyed by the Babylonians in the year 586 BC. But the Israelis, the Jews, continued to live in the Middle East and also in Israel, even though they lost their sovereignty. They preserved their religion and their language, the Hebrew language, and they continued to live under the Persian Empire and then under the Greek Empire until they revolt against the Greeks in the famous Hanukkah revolt in the year 167 BC, and they renewed their sovereignty for the second time. And they ruled themselves until the Romans subjected them in the 1st century CE. By then, the Jews already compiled their holy books, and they called it the Hebrew Bible, in Hebrew, the Tanakh, Torah, Nevi'im, Tuvim. And they already start an oral tradition of their holy scripture, calling the Torah Baal Peh. And eventually, in the 3rd century CE, they compiled it to one book of 6 chapters called the Mishnah. The Jews lost in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd revolt against the Romans, and the Romans also expelled many of the Jews to the Mediterranean Sea areas and also deep inside of Europe, all the way to Germany and even all the way to Russia, and deep even to Persia and Iran and also to Africa. But over there, the Jews created communities that maintained their relationship with the land of Israel, in which a Jewish community headed by the Sanhedrin, a spiritual and municipal leadership that ruled them until the Arab period in the 7th century. As part of the Roman Empire at that time, the Jews also had to create a way to facilitate their own calendar without being interrupted by foreign and non-Jewish authorities. So they actually create the Hebrew calendar, which is used up until today to determine the dates of the months and the year. And it's based on an algorithm that is predicting the circulation of the moon and the sun. And the Jews continue to use that already from the year 300 and so. The Sanhedrin ruled the Jews until the end of the Roman period, and after that, during the Arab period, the Jews ruled themselves and they're headed by the Geonim, which were also very smart scholars of the Torah and the Talmud. The Talmud is also commentary of the Hebrew Bible and also guidelines to a variety of rules and ideas about rules in the Jewish faith. When the Arabs conquered the land of the Jews and the entire Middle East, the Jews were ruler under them and they were subjected to all sorts of rule that limited them, but at least they were allowed to live in Jerusalem, something that the Christians didn't allow them to do for about 400 years. Also, they could worship freely in Jerusalem and also in Hebron, something that the Christians did not allow them. So the Arab period, which lasted from the 7th century to the 12th century, was a prolonged period of time that the Jewish community was solidified. However, during the same time, big Jewish communities were created in Europe, in Spain and in France and in Germany, and those two Jewish communities were in constant relationship with the communities in Israel. And this is why when the Crusaders came to the land of Israel and they massacred most of the Jews in the land, the Jewish communities in France and Germany and France started to return to the land of Israel and they reestablished the Jewish community and they resettled the land and continued the constant presence of Jews in the land of Israel. The Rambam, who was a Sephardi rabbi, ended up living in the land of Israel and afterwards in Egypt in the end of the 12th century during the Crusade period. He is the person that took the Jewish religion and connected it with logic and reason. And in his book, Our Profound Way of How to Take Religion and mystical ideas and fantastic ideas into reality and logic, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. This was in contrast to other trends in the Jewish world, also in Israel, in Egypt, and also in Europe and Spain, towards a much more fantastic and mystical ideas such as the Kabbalah. The descendant of the Rambam ruled the Jewish community in Israel, Syria, and Egypt until the 15th century. From then, the Jewish community was led mainly by Sephardi Jews. After the Crusaders lost to the Muslims in the end of the 13th century, the Jewish community in the land of Israel started to rebuild itself with the help of migrations of Jews from Italy, France, Spain, and even from Poland. And small Jewish communities started to redevelop in Jerusalem, Hebron, Safed, and later in Tiberias. And they sought to look for a compile of all those religious ideas by the Rambam and others like the Rambam in order to one set of rules. And this is why in the 16th centuries they created the Shulchan Aruch, which is right now the last word when it comes to Jewish law in practice. And it was created in Safed in the north of Israel, and its author was Rabbi Yosef Karo, the Sephardi. The Ashkenazim also, they wrote their own version of the Shulchan Aruch, but it's about the same idea. So both Ashkenazim, both Sephardim, the two most dominant Jewish communities in the world, basically follow the same religious law thanks to that. Living under the Ottoman Empire, which was Muslim, the Jews in general enjoyed some sort of liberty and protection, but they were generally oppressed, especially in the land of Israel, and they were very poor. And this is why the Jewish communities in the land of Israel sent messengers to the diaspora to collect donations and ask for help. This process of the Jewish community in Israel becoming very dependent on the Jewish communities in the diaspora made them very connected to one another and very well aware of what's going on. So people in Poland or in Holland or also in Persia knew exactly what's going on in Jerusalem or in Tiberias or in Safed or in Hebron. And this is in time when there was no phone and there was no email, but they knew everything that's going on. So they were very connected to one another. And because the Jews were so oppressed, there was a set of starting to think of how to solve the issue. And they got to the point of understanding that just sending more donation and making more prayer is just not enough. And this is where modern Zionism started to evolve, the idea that Jews should rule themselves and be sovereign and not to be dependent on donations from generous communities and prayers. They should help themselves, they should defend themselves, and they should attack those that come to suppress them and enslave them. Zionism is the idea that Jews should live freely and independently in their homeland, land of Israel. And modern Zionism basically came and says that we don't have to wait for the Messiah to come in order for us to do that. And this is why once this idea was addressed in this way in the end of the 19th century, it was very well accepted by some people, but was very well declined by some people who didn't know how to accept that. They thought it's either too fantastic by other people, especially the poor Jews, thought it to be a fantastic idea. And it actually brought, also because of the condition in the Ottoman Empire at that specific time, that quite a lot of Jews were able to come to the land of Israel, and they were able to purchase land. Before that, Jews were not allowed to purchase land. The Ottomans changed that in the year 1867. And they purchased land, they dried the swamps, they cleared the roads, they make the areas clear of all sorts of diseases and mosquitoes and bugs and bad animals, and they created fields and houses and roads and water and electricity. And therefore, after a few years, already there was a country that you can create a state on top of it, and you can sustain it economically and create a state of an independent state that can even accommodate and absorb more people, not just Jews, also Arabs. All right, and this is what Zionists propel. Eventually, the Ottomans lost to the British thanks to the Jews, and the Jews were granted by the British with a mandate that promised them that in the end they're gonna create their own state. And this is why in the year 1948 the Jews established their independent state, Israel. And this is Israel today. And now you see all the connection from biblical Israel until modern Israel, the uncut, the uninterrupted connection between biblical Israel to modern day Israel.